Welcome back, everyone, to a very special episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with our special guest, but first we want to give a shout out to our partners, Vital Signs Wall of Fame, the Global Community of Women in High School Sports, the Florida Coaches Coalition, and We Coach. These are four great organizations. I really encourage you to add them to your network. Now we want to give a shout out to our sponsors, so don't hit that fast forward button just yet. These are all great companies I used as an athletic director. I think you should be using them too. Here we go. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges across the country. Do I need to say anything more? Hometown Ticketing is digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, more customization. Go to hometownticketing.com. Their team is going to help you make the best solution for your online ticketing needs. We also want to thank Gipper. Gipper is the official social media solution for the Educational AD Podcast. And if you go to Gipper.com, their team will help you to create world-class marketing content for your school's social media channel. It's going to help you celebrate your teams, promote your athletes and your program. Gipper's used and trusted by over 3,000 athletic programs across the country. It's professional design made simple. Go to Gipper.com, mention the podcast, you'll get a nice discount. We also want to thank Snap Raise. Are you tired of spending hours and hours with a fundraising platform that gives you little, if any, return? Stop right here. Go to snapraise.com/EDAD. It's hands down the best fundraising platform out there. We used it at my school with great success. So will you. Coaches loved it, parents loved it, and what's more, it works. They also have an entire suite of platforms like Snap Store, Snap Manage, Snap Connect. It's going to help you do your job easier. Go to snapraise.com to check them all out. That's snapraise.com. We also like to say thank you to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that helped them coach our kids up to their highest level. At Huddle, we believe in sports, and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. We'd also like to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo. See their tables and their boards in action. Their products not only generate income for your department, they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. That's sidelineinteractive.com. Make sure you check them out today. We'd also like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the sports, or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention the podcast, you'll get a nice discount. Check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's a great way to showcase your school's proudest moments. vitalsignswalloffame.com. We'd also like to say thank you to Home Campus. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association management platform for the Educational AD Podcast. It's also your one-stop for things like schedules, student-athlete clearance and eligibility, and a whole lot more. To find out all the things that Home Campus can do for you, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. And we'd like to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. At my school, we use surveys for everything: parents, coaches, teachers, you name it. And the information that comes back is almost always positive, but the surveys also allow you to hear from those squeaky wheels and address small issues before they turn into big issues. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. And that positive information, that's tremendously valuable to have when you're talking to a frustrated parent or your principal or your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. This is officially our 500th interview with an athletic director or athletic leader, and I am very honored to have as our guest Dr. Michael Blackburn. Dr. Blackburn's a certified master athletic administrator, and I'm sure many of our listeners will know him as the recent executive director for the NIAAA. He's enjoying retirement. We talked a little bit before we came on board, but Dr. Michael Blackburn, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thank you, Jake. Pleasure to be with you.
Well, we've been blessed to hear from some veteran ADs in some of our recent episodes. And as I shared with you, I think it's important for all generations of athletic directors to hear about the journey that, some of our, and again, I want to use this word applicably, legendary athletic directors have had during their career. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that Mike Blackburn bio, where you were born, where you grew up. Maybe take us up through your own, let's say, high school and college days, and then we'll take a quick break. But what's the Mike Blackburn origin story?
I think like many of my colleagues in this profession, we don't enjoy a great deal talking about ourselves. We're more servant-minded. I think that's the goal, and that's kind of the way I feel here. But I graduated from Maconaquah High School in Indiana. Was born and raised and educated in the state of Indiana, between South Bend and Indianapolis, north central part of the state, and participated in middle school, junior high athletics, as well as high school, and no youth sports at that point in time. But the interesting thing about the school, which was basically a rural school with a couple of towns that were part of it, was that what is today called the Grissom Air Force Base was in that community. And when I was a kid, it was a Strategic Air Command B-52 bomber base working in and out of Vietnam during that span of time. My point in saying that is, for a school of 900 or 1,000, probably at that point, very diverse student body, kids that had lived around the world and all over the United States, and a number of ethnicities and race and background, none of which us locally had experienced. Some of them had lived all over the world. So that was a great introduction to working with fellow students and fellow athletes that may have played football in Texas and played it a little bit differently than some of us knew how to play it in Indiana, as far as aggressiveness and so on. Went to college at Indiana State University, had a BS there, and I had a double major, so I was able to, or had the ability to teach, if you will, putting yourself out there for the first job, 6 different subjects. And pretty much that settled into a couple of those as I worked through teaching and coaching early on. Got my master's at St. Francis College, which is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then later on, got my EDS for principal and superintendency at Indiana State, and then followed that with the doctorate later on at Indiana State. My first 2 jobs during a 5-year period were schools in Fulton County, Indiana, and Noble County, Central Noble and Caston. And I taught U.S. history for the most part at those schools. And the first job, I was a 3-sport coach. One of those, a head coach, coming right out of college, probably not well prepared for that, but that's the way it oftentimes goes in education. If we're going to hire you as a teacher, you're going to also do this.
Yep.
Hired on at $7,100, not just for coaching. That was my entire salary, starting out in 1972, 73, and coached 6 periods a day, taught U.S. history 6 periods a day, and then coached three sports during the school year. So a little bit different than we are today.
Now, I want to come back to that teaching and coaching, but let's go back to your high school days. You're just a couple years older than me, but at your high school, my experience was, and this is a big public high school, is out in the country, but our football, basketball, and for me track, but all my buddies did baseball. But there might have been maybe 6 coaches in our entire school. They all taught in our school, but they coached all the different sports. The head football coach was an assistant track coach. He coached JV basketball, and across the board, the head basketball coach was an assistant football coach. Was that your experience too as a high school student athlete?
I would say for the most part, we probably had, I'd have to think back through, but I don't know of anyone that coached one sport. Let's put it that way. My first role was an assistant football coach, head wrestling coach, which I really had no business being a head wrestling coach, and an assistant track coach. So that's what I saw my coaches do as well. And a lot of your learning obviously came from that. I would have to say that as all of us, I think during our high school, middle school, even years, a couple of teacher coaches had great influence. You might think it would be a head coach in both cases. One was a junior high basketball coach and the other a high school English teacher that was an assistant football coach, coached the secondary. And I look back on him, and from writing aspects and just the areas that I've been able to be a part of through the NIAAA and the Indiana AD Association and so on and so forth, that's been key and invaluable. Can't extend enough thanks to those individuals, one of which is no longer with us.
Yeah. One of the questions that I ask is right along those lines. And again, obviously, I think anyone who goes into this profession, leadership profession, was inspired and mentored by others. But can you look back on those days, those junior high school days, and an event at the time, it didn't seem like much, but looking back later as a young wrestling coach or as a young AD, that you go, hey, that moment was important. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but anything come to mind?
You're talking about as a teacher coach?
As a student athlete, something that happened while you were, participating, that later on you can look back and say, hey, that was an important moment for me.
I can't think of anything specific to that area, but as life goes, it was a gradual learning process. And, we have our eyes peeled when it comes to those people who are in front of us in a classroom or coaching us in a sport. And we watch and we listen. We watch their actions. We listen to their words. In most cases, hopefully, the athlete wants to excel for that coach. And fortunately, I had so many people that were just positive influences, great role models, encouragers, as so many of us did in those careers.
Yeah. I want to follow up on your that first job. You're teaching 6 periods, you're coaching 3 sports, and I think you said your salary was $7,100 for everything. I was a little bit after you, but I still remember that first salary of mine, and a very similar schedule, except I was at a junior high and they actually had 4 seasons. So I'm coaching 4 seasons, teaching 6 out of 7 classes. My salary was $9,600 for the year. And I thought I was a king. I mean, I go, boy, they're paying me to do this. I'm going to guess you might've felt the same way.
No doubt. It was kind of an eye opener for me. I thought I knew as a coming out of college, so to speak, and having been an athlete, what a coach might be involved in time wise, but it was far beyond that. If you wanted to do the job correctly, you had to spend the time. And I was Brenda, my wife, as all of us that have spouses that have gone through the profession of coaching and athletic director, the demand is tremendous, and they're so important in your successes, and certainly in the family and raising children and so on. So we've been a good team, and I've appreciated her beginning back in that earliest day. She kids oftentimes that she was a farmer's daughter, and Dad was always there on the farm and whenever was needed, and went everywhere with them that needed to be. So this was an eye opener and a little bit difficult for her that, gee, 9 months out of the year you're gone. And then if you're a head coach, at that point in time, your summer was pretty well spent as well with conditioning and weight training and so on. So that the key for me, I guess, was that balance. And you say something that occurred as a student athlete, I think as an AD, that's where one area that I really had to learn and grow was that balance in life.
Oh no, absolutely. I was very fortunate. I married a career coach and educator, so she kind of got it. And there were times where I'm putting my stuff on the back burner because she's coaching big cross country race or something like that. It's going to be 40 years for us come December. How long have you and your lovely bride been together?
We actually got married while I was in college, so we're at 52 years, 52 years.
All right. Congratulations. That's great. We're going to take our first break. For our listeners, our guest again is Dr. Michael Blackburn, longtime athletic director, longtime executive director for the NIAAA. Like I said, we're going to take our first break. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, and more customization. Hometown Ticketing is here to help you make the best choice for online ticketing. Go to hometownticketing.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Gipper is the official social media graphics solution for the podcast. And if you go to Gipper.com, their team is going to help you to create world-class content for your school's social media channel. Your kids are on social media, and Gipper's going to help you celebrate your teams and promote your program. It's used by nearly 3,000 athletic departments across the country, and it's professional design made simple. So simple, even I can use it. Go to Gipper.com to get started. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Dr. Michael Blackburn, Certified Master Athletic Administrator and longtime Executive Director for the NIAAA. Mike, you shared with us, coming out of college, like many of us, we start teaching, we start coaching, and we get into that lifestyle. Talk about the transition for you from coach to the other side of the desk as the athletic director. How did that happen? And, maybe take us up to where you joined the NIAAA, and then we'll cover that in the next segment.
Yeah, happy to. I was in my third school. As I said earlier, I think I was at two schools, one for 2 years, one for 3, and had gone to my third school, Northwestern High School in Howard County, Indiana. We're talking about 1977, 78, was coaching football. And during the season, the principal came to me and asked if I would have any interest in serving as acting athletic director. The athletic director that was there was leaving, heading out west somewhere, getting out of education. And I thought it was something I'd always thought I might have interest in. At the same time, I'm pretty busy in the classroom. And they said, well, we will leave you of a course. We'll still be teaching 5 courses. But I did that for the remainder of the school year. They opened the position at the end of the school year. I applied, and the rest was 28 years as athletic director. I was 27 when that happened, unexpectedly, so to speak. So I coached another, I guess I coached 5 years there altogether. And then, as you can imagine, teaching classes, coaching, and athletic administrator did not. I would not advise that for anyone, but did not uh, suffice in any of the areas, I would say. So finally, over that part of that span, I was relieved of the classroom, and that position gradually grew from there. But that was a great opportunity, as it turns out, a great community. Our kids were all educated in that school system, and I just applaud the teachers and coaches that I was able to work with. It was an honor to do so.
You mentioned, that first job, your principal, very magnanimous. Hey, we'll give you, one period off teaching to be an AD. Obviously the job of an athletic director has changed dramatically, since you and I were, on those front lines. When you first came on as an AD, maybe those first couple of years, we hear the expression, you don't know what you don't know. What were a couple of things that at that time you didn't know about being an athletic director that I'm sure you found out very quickly?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I thought I knew as a student athlete and a college, someone in college training to be a teacher coach. But until you're in the role and all the demands that are coming at you, you really don't. So I know that the NIAAA was its first year was 1977. That was my first year as an athletic director. So throughout my career, I have had the NIAAA there. There was no leadership training at that during those first years. Ironically, certification came first, and I think I picked up my CAA, which was the initial level of certification during the second year of its availability. My point of saying that is getting involved and preparing yourself professionally, looking back, whatever's available to you, and there's so much today that is available to you through the NIAAA, is essential, no question, for you to be confident in your role and for you to offer your student athletes, your coaches, your community the very best that you have to offer and the best programs and opportunities.
As you continued in your role as a high school athletic director, what was for you? What was your experience like working with community? We talk about how parents are so involved these days. What was the parent involvement level back then when you were first starting out as an AD?
Well, I even look back to my childhood and the old codgers sitting at the barber shop or on the liar's bench or whatever the case may be. They've always been there. But at the same time, that's part of it. And it's important to them, all community members, what's going on in the local school. Hopefully that's the case. And they take interest in it. Coaches, I guess, are on the firing line, and they receive a lot of different opinions as to how that should be accomplished. But my purpose of preparing yourself, probably we'll talk about this later on when we talk about the toolbox that you wanted to discuss. But preparing yourself is important. Building a foundation on which you have strengths and you have the ability to base all of your decision making. Those things that come to you that, as you're kind of alluding to, can be controversial. You can go back to that personal and professional philosophy and make wise decisions. No question that over time comes wisdom, and athletic administration is no different. If I came in as a coach and I was a coach and then became an athletic administrator and continued to do both, that brought criticism, as you might think, well, you're spending more on this sport than you are on this sport. Right. Or Title IX also was new to education my first year as a teacher coach. So it's always been there, and it's always been a priority during my career. But my wife, for example, I mentioned, she was her high school days, she was I just lost the terminology they used, but there was no high school athletics. So they offered intramural activities
Right.
for young ladies and sometimes played outside their own school. But she ended up going to college and he was recruited right away to be a hurdler, a field hockey player, and so on. So her experience was totally different than what young ladies have today.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. My wife, again, a little bit younger. She ran on the boys cross country team in high school because there wasn't a girls. And when she started beating a lot of the boys, the coach finally said, oh, "Okay, I guess we'll start a girls team." But yeah, absolutely, I love it. We're going to take another break for our listeners. Our guest again is Dr. Michael Blackburn, longtime professional in the world of educational athletics. We'll be right back, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our friends at Huddle for their support of the podcast. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. When I was a football coach, I used Huddle every single day, and it was just great. But when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and all of our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that allowed them to help coach our kids up to their highest level. At Huddle, we believe in sports, and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 8 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Mike, you kind of took us on a journey from coach to AD. You mentioned your initial involvement with the NIAAA, which was just getting going back then. Share, if you can, with our listeners, how did you come on board with the NIAAA, first as, the associate director and then ultimately as the executive director? How did that all happen?
Well, my involvement initially was at the state level, the Indiana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators. And by being involved in that organization and then serving as a district representative, served as their president for a term and 2 vice presidential years, and then later on became the permanent secretary until joining the NIAAA. A spinoff from that, I guess, was involvement with the NIAAA, and eventually I served on the first strategic plan of the NIAAA. Back in the day, Frank Kovaleski was executive director at that time. And matter of fact, interestingly enough, moving into the NIAAA office, I've been involved in some way with all 5 of our strategic plans that we have had thus far. Was on the NFHS conference advisory, or AD advisory as it's called back then, and involved eventually in 1993 to 2005 with the publications committee, which was an invaluable experience working with Dr. John Olson and Jack Foley, and some of you mentioned legends. I don't consider myself that, but I consider some of those that have gone before me definitely laying the foundation for the NIAAA. And then I was on the Indiana High School Athletic Association, IHSAA. I served on their board as a representative for 2 years, and just a variety of involvement. When Frank decided that he was going to retire and Bruce Whitehead, who was his executive assistant, moved up, I went through that interview process, which was a great one. But the impact of Bruce Whitehead, the person that I thought should get that role, but at the same time, I talked with him about it. We were friends, colleagues in the state, and was very valuable for me as well. And 6 months later, the board decided to add the first associate executive director. Bruce was the first titled executive director, and Frank Kovaleski initially was an NFHS employee that worked with NIAAA. And his last year, the NIAAA began paying him his salary, and he was the national director. So in 6 months later, I interviewed, went through the process of the associate executive director, and was fortunate enough to move into that role. So left my role of 28 years at Northwestern, and We moved to northern Indianapolis, and what a great experience it's been just to meet ADs around the nation and work cooperatively with them in so many ways, and be able to. The NIAAA is a servant leader-based organization, and be able to offer what they need, and in many cases, as you said earlier, to help them understand you don't know what you don't know. And as soon as they learn of it, whether it's becoming a member, and I point to COVID sometimes during the pandemic, 2020 and 21 was a great period of growth for the NIAAA because we were introduced to people who were out of school looking for professional development opportunities, and our leadership management system allowed us to ramp it up. And Phil Risen was heavily involved in that. I'm getting ahead of myself a bit, but as the Associate Executive Director, working with LTI, adding more workshops, you were involved in all of that. If you taught something at the most recent workshop, we asked you to do it again during the COVID pandemic online for those who were not at the conference. And we taught more LTIs and offered more. And I see that as having been a very important period of time for the NIAAA.
No, you're absolutely right. And I can still remember working with another athletic director. It was Ernest Robertson Jr. out of Miami. We did a webinar. I want to say it was in March or something. Probably. Of COVID in Florida. Like everybody else, we had canceled our state association conference, which was, I say, my conference. I was the one that had organized that. But I got to think with Zoom, hey, we could do something like this for our state conference. And we ended up, I reached out to our workshop presenters for our state conference that were going to present and said, hey, could you do something in a Zoom conference? And it just took off like I never would have imagined. And it was a lot of fun. And as you said, the connections that you make that we were allowed to make that never would have happened without COVID and without those NIAAA webinars. We're going to talk more about current and future NIAAA. I'm going to go back to when you first came on. I think many of our listeners now, there's some veterans like us, but there's some younger ADs, and they see what the NIAAA is. Can you paint a picture of what it was like then when you came on, so we can kind of appreciate the tremendous growth that's occurred?
Be happy to. We were, as most know, I think, the NFHS spawned the NIAAA in 1977 after many overtures by athletic directors. In the 60s and early 70s, we were in a time in the United States where there was some upheaval and everyone was wanting a voice, and some things were happening in athletics that athletic administrators wanted to have a voice in, even at the state level, oftentimes controlled by principals and superintendents. Still that way in some cases, but may or may not have had a handle on what was necessary. And ADs were in some cases excluded from the decision-making process at a state level. But that being said, ADs around the nation wanted to have organization within the state. That was where it happened first. State associations came before the NIAAA, and state associations also came before the NFHS. But you can see where people wanted a voice and had approached the NFHS and a couple of other organizations asking for a role for ADs, and all declined initially. And then the NFHS later indicated that they would assist us in getting started. So in 2005, when we came in, we had obviously been around since 1977, and we had a maximum of 5,800 members that fluctuated from year to year. I think the first year we were about 900 members back in 77, 78. So we had approached, I say we, members of the board of directors had approached the NFHS about separating, if you will, continuing to work together on the conference and gaining our autonomy, if you will. So the first few years that I came in working with Bruce Whitehead, who was the executive director, and we were together 11 years there in the office, just a tremendous experience of growth for the NIAAA. When you consider leadership training, at that point in time was about 24 courses, and today we're approaching 60. I think they will teach 59 this year. In Orlando, the scholarship program for students began during that time. The Hall of Fame selection process and having a Hall of Fame occurred then. We received our first accreditation through the North Central Association, which is now Cognia, and just so many firsts, if you will, for the NIAAA that initiated growth, additional certifications. You served on the certification committee and you're aware of the growth that's occurred there. So membership, though, I think is one of they all rely on one another, but no doubt membership is where the strength lies, if you will, and that continues on today. We promote leadership through membership because those in the field, we have so much to offer them that they need to be a part of their state association and the NIAAA. And we have grown in the span of time from 5,000. I think we were 5,800 the year before Bruce and I came in. The next year we broke 6,000 for the first time, and it's just been a gradual increase about every 2 years, sometimes 1 year, sometimes 3, but we jump another 1,000. And in my retirement last year in January, we were about 14,000. And that's been one of my it's just something I jumped on initially that I really enjoyed, was promoting the idea of membership. And that first year, 2005, we started dual membership. We now have 36 states that are dual members, which means they join both the state and the NIAAA association simultaneously. I will say, though, before 2005, there were some Section 1 states that had personally adopted dual membership. Connecticut, Massachusetts, I think New York as well, had taken that upon themselves, that it's important for you as an AD in our state to be a part of the NIAAA. And they were a very active section and still are today. We'll probably break 15,000 this year. And the sky's the limit. You know, we have about 19,500 high schools in the U.S. At the same time, we have a number of schools that do not belong to their state association or their boarding schools or whatever the case may be. And the NIAAA is unique in the sense that we are about athletic administrators' professional growth. So we really don't care if they're public. And I know public-private issues exist out there. Yeah. We don't care where they come from. It's international, of course, is another area that we have involved ourselves in. We want to be there to help them build their foundations and to grow. So we have seen that, and the growth has just been tremendous. And we've tried to increase the number of lifetime members. I think we have had about 700 lifetime members in the history of the organization. Many of those are not with us any longer, but we're in the 400 to 500 lifetime members. Dual states, I mentioned, California just announced that they're going to be a dual state, and that'll be 37, and that'll be a very large one. And I always say it just takes one person who's on fire for helping ADs in their state to grow as a professional and to build a personal foundation. California, I see Gene Ashton is one that has just been key over the years there. Ohio is reaching new heights, and Bruce Brown, who is not with us any longer, was the key guy in Ohio. And you can just go through the state, whether it be their board or their executive director or a president at some point, someone took this as an interest and convinced the rest of the state that this was the way to go.
Yeah, boy, just tremendous information. I love the historical viewpoint and just outlining the growth. We're going to talk more in our next segment, and I'm going to set it up for our listeners. I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the accreditation, because I don't think a lot of our younger members understand the importance and the impact of that. So let's go and take that quick break, but we are coming back with more with our guest, our 500th guest, Dr. Michael Blackburn. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our friends at Snap Mobile for their support. Have you ever done a fundraiser and spent hours and hours with it for little, if any, return? You need to stop right here and go to snapraise.com. SnapRaise is hands down the best online fundraising platform out there. We used it at my school with great success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. Our business office loved it. And what's more, it works. Go to snapraise.com/EDAD. Check out their entire platform. There's Snap Manage, Snap Connect, Snap Store. It's all designed to help you do your job better. That's snapraise.com. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their scoreboards and their score tables in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Check out all the great products and see how they can help you and your program. And we want to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Dr. Michael Blackburn, the past executive director for the NIAAA, longtime athletic director in the state of Indiana. Mike, you were talking about, the NIAAA, the workings, how it's grown, and you mentioned accreditation, which is a really big deal. I don't think some of our maybe younger ADs, maybe even some of the older ones, understand what that is and why it is so important and why the NIAAA is so unique in having attained that accreditation. Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We had established our offices, our own offices, NIAAA offices, in 2007. Still the current office. That's where we're located at 9100 Keystone. And we had a group of individuals from North Central Association visit with us. And actually, this was spawned through Al Thursland from Kansas, who had a conversation with Bruce. You know, he was a principal at the time and had been an AD, and he thought accreditation was something to look into, even though we were not a school or a educational body, if you will, outside of leadership training. We were not a organization that provided credit like a university, I'll say that. So we had a group of 4 attend a meeting in our office, and we explained who we are and what we were interested in. And they came back and said they thought it was viable and they would be happy to follow through with us. That was 2009. And we went through the process and received our first accreditation from North Central Association Cassie in 2010, which is a 5-year accreditation. The importance, we think, is it's not an evaluation of an assessment, if you will, of only leadership training, which would be our educational arm, but certification. Every aspect of the NIAAA is what they evaluated. The difficult part was going through the process of uh, all of the criteria that they utilized and applying that to a non-school setting, because all the language and all the questions were geared towards an educational institution. So we now have an accreditation committee, but then it was pretty much Bruce and I that were going through this process. So I can remember having 7 different areas that we were being evaluated on and 435 criteria that had to be addressed in writing as to how we met those, proof of items, actually hands-on items that we shared with them as to how we were going about reaching that aspect. And we actually, I think Patty Conrad was in the office, and she would tell you that we locked ourselves in the boardroom for about a week and did nothing but work on that process. We were fortunate enough to become accredited. North Central Association was a part of Advanced Ed. They changed their structure, and as you know, our accreditation, third accreditation came out as the third and fourth as Advanced Ed, and now it is Cognia because they have merged with a testing company that is part of that process. The strength of it is continuous improvement. They look at everything that we do educationally, but also anything that we offer, our instruction, how we go about that, how our instructor, everything is data driven, and even more so in this last assessment that we went through, and it will become more so in the next assessment. And we were the first institution, if you will, in the world, non-educational institution, right, non-middle school, non-elementary, non-high school, non-college, to be accredited. And the NFHS just went through this process a year ago, and they have become an accredited institution as well. So I think everyone, as you say, may not understand. If they're educators, they've probably been through the process, even serving on a committee within their school district. But how does that affect the NIAAA? And for those that are heavily involved in the process, whether it be the accreditation committee or those that are selected, those 28 people that serve on the assessment and accreditation process of the 2-year process, fully understand how all members benefit, because it pushes us to be our very best.
That was a great explanation. Thank you. And I love that you put in there that, the NIAAA is the only, non, school institutional organization, if you will, to have that accreditation. I remember, during, committee meetings and state coordinators meetings, you would, or Phil would frequently share information from the accreditation visit. And, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm only going to throw out a couple, but it seems like the people on the accreditation team, from Cognia and from North Central, they would share comments with you about, they were just so impressed with our organization that this is all volunteers, this is all coming, voluntarily. And I'm probably going to phrase this wrong, but they were very impressed with the high level of professionalism from everyone involved. Are those fair comments to share?
I couldn't say it any better. I think, the last assessment we went through was during COVID, and we had the choice of having it in an online method, which we decided to go with, or to put it off a year. We decided to go ahead, and I really feel like, and it was a strong evaluation, and we were approved again for another 5 years. But the thing I said was missing was those committee members did not have the opportunity to meet our members at the national conference. This is where the assessment takes place. Much goes into leading up to that conference where we'll be assessed. But in all previous accreditations, that team was there from North Central, Advanced Ed, whatever the case may be. And they would stop you in the hallway and they would ask you what you thought about the executive director. What do you think about this certification program? They gave them a voice, and without question, that was missing in the most recent accreditation. And yes, everything needs to be data driven. At the same time, that personal touch, if you will, and them being able to hear from the members what the NIAAA means to them, how important it is in their profession and their organization, organizational skills, their education is key. And I see it continuing. I don't see it being something that drops by the wayside in the future, but just something that I've been able to be a part of grassroots, if you will, at the beginning in 2009 with those 435 criteria that we worked through to where it is now. I wouldn't say it's a well-oiled machine because there's so much work that goes into it, and it's different every 5 years. It goes from 7 standards to 5 standards to 3 standards, and I'm not sure what it'll be next time around. But we have some really great people. Holly Farnese is chairing that committee. Al Thursland chaired that committee prior. I'm just thankful for those people that have interest as athletic administrators in that area and experience at their school district level that benefit us a great deal.
Oh no, absolutely. And again, I appreciate you sharing all this behind the scenes detail for our listeners. We're going to go ahead and take another quick break, but we're coming back to hear more about NIAAA. Once again, for our listeners, our guest is Dr. Michael Blackburn, longtime athletic director in Indiana and the past executive director for the NIAAA. So stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We'd like to say thank you to Home Campus for their support of the podcast. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association information management platform for us. It's also your one-stop platform for things like scheduling, student-athlete eligibility and clearance, and a whole lot more. As a high school athletic director, I used Home Campus every single day, and it was just great. To find out how you can be a part of the Home Campus team, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. Check it out today. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Mike, it's just been great to, number one, hear your story, because I didn't know all of your history, but also hear about the history of the NIAAA and how it has grown. I know how much it's impacted my own career, professionally as well as personally, all the connections that I've been able to make over the years. From your perspective, where do you see the NIAAA going in the coming years? You talked about, LTI courses this year are going to be at a record high. Where do you see the organization going in the coming years?
I think nowhere but up. I think as membership grows and more people are benefiting from all that the NIAAA has to offer, it generates excitement in the profession. I really think that the key to this whole thing has been, let's take membership, for example, has been our autonomy and allowing those that are members of the NIAAA to own the NIAAA, if you will. And you mentioned volunteers earlier that have been so important to accreditation. Those committees can't believe, the accreditation committees can't believe that this many people, and we say around 400, that are in various roles within the organization. They can't believe that they volunteer their time without pay in most all cases, or even reimbursement, if you will, to help lead this organization, lead one another. And you talk about some of those that have been around for a while and those that, yes, are important today. And there have been those that that were important prior. And there's going to be those that are going to be very important going ahead in the future. I watched the growth that has occurred just in the time that, well, I've been involved with it as a member since its earliest day, but being on staff and watching the growth of the things I mentioned earlier that under Bruce's leadership were accomplished. And then I mentioned the learning management system. During my time, that was a key item that the board approved to do because it allowed for online courses and it allowed for state coordinators for certification and leadership training to have access to all of the materials. NIAAA is something that occurred more recently. I see it as a cohort study. It's catching on. It develops interest, and I think the categories will expand without question. We have 4 new courses right now that potentially could be taught in 2025. That's a large jump in 1 year, but the topics just keep rolling out, and people are volunteering to be the authors of those courses, to step forward before their peers and pilot those courses and take criticism, if you will, in some cases, as to how they can improve the course, and then go back and revamp it a bit to make it even better. I think the standards that we have in place, our professional development leadership team is a large part of that, and the standards that we have in place to improve all aspects of NIAAA are key. The quality program assessment, QPA, which was pretty slow for many years. I think Mike Elston and Don Bales that work with that closely are not sure how they're going to be able to continue to handle it if it continues to grow. I know Phil has begun an advisory committee on a QPA. QPA may be involved in the NIAAA cohort study as an option. So many things the foundations have been built and everything just keeps growing on top of that. And that's largely because the demand of the membership. It's something they want. It's something they need. And, membership itself, that growth has occurred. I mentioned individuals in the states. We've tried to create ways to reward their achievement, to acknowledge their achievement, to provide them the tools necessary. And when you jump from, we came on board in 2005, and in 2014, I think it was, we doubled the number of members in a 14-year period that had been the past 30. So what's the next 14 years? Do we go beyond the number of high schools that there are in the United States? Middle schools are key. Many states, some states have no middle school athletics. Retired are big in some states. Others have boarding schools. We've helped Canada get their association started back in the day. A group of 5 visited the offices in Indianapolis. They now have a CIAAA, and they use our leadership training courses while at the same time building some of their own. And of course, we're aware of international. This year, the first LTI course was taught in Africa. And we've been on every continent now as far as offering leadership training. I say that at the same time, I know that Don Bales went to Tunisia years ago and taught a class. So that may have been the first African endeavor, but we've definitely been in Asia, in South America, in Europe. Our largest number of foreign or international, if you will, members is in China, except for Canada, is in China. And they're ADs that work at, in many cases, international schools within those countries, in most cases, English-speaking schools. And in many cases, really growing athletics in their schools internationally based upon the American style, if you will, the American method. So I think there's no stepping back. I see only forward growth. We've got a great team. You're aware of our staff. Patty Conrad, I mentioned, that's been there since 2005. Bruce and I hired her, and Fran Flannery, who has retired many years ago, was key to certification in its early days. Cheryl Van Paris, who came to us in 2010 and just retired a couple of years ago, had both leadership training and certification. She was in charge of professional development. Nellie Crocker, Bruce and I hired. I think Bruce's retirement year, we hired Nellie, and she started out in membership and has now taken certification and membership. Charisse DeBose, you may remember, who just left us in 2002, worked with marketing and was key. And Alex Ferguson, who came on as an office administrator and now heads anything leadership training or affiliated. Alex is taking care of that. Justin Chapman has been key. He came in, we hired him during COVID, and he's a journalism major, and anything that comes out of our office, he has his hands on. And Kathy Donaldson, just a joy to have in the office, and she's the administrative assistant, but her skills go far beyond that. So all of this team working with Phil Risen, and of course now Becky Moran and Rich Barton, upon my retirement, or we worked together for 6 months, I guess, have taken over. So they have a group of 8. The NIAAA should be so pleased to have those people leading the organization, and what that small staff does. Started out with Bruce and Fran, and then expanded. Now we're up to 8 people. So they work diligently, they work smart, they do so many things. But as membership has expanded, so has the office staff, and it may have to expand again, I would say.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the staff, and you used the term earlier. You talked about accreditation felt like the NIAAA was a well-oiled machine. I think it really is, but it's those people at the office there in Indianapolis. They make it seem like a well-oiled machine. Seem like it. I mean, it is. It really is. So appreciate you giving them a shout out. Okay. Well, Mike, this has just been so great, spending some time with you one-on-one. Truly appreciate you sharing, appreciate everything you've done for the NIAAA and for me personally in my career. But we're not quite done. We always wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. Anybody listening knows that you certainly know your way around the world of educational athletics. But we're going to take our final break. When we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. Only going to let you put a couple tools in that toolbox, though. So please stay with us. We're going to take that last break. And when we come back, we're going to find out what Dr. Michael Blackburn is going to put into his new athletic director toolbox. We want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Athletic directors get a lot of feedback, and a lot of times it's from parents or even student athletes that have a complaint, and we need to hear from those people, but that really doesn't tell the whole picture. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. As you listen to those squeaky wheel parents or a frustrated athlete, keep in mind that 98% of the people in your program probably love and support what you do, but you need the survey, you need the data to be able to show that. And it's a tremendously valuable tool to have when you're talking with that frustrated parent or your principal or your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Like I said, they'll create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have been visiting, and it's been a great visit with Dr. Michael Blackburn, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, longtime athletic director in the state of Indiana, and the former executive director for the NIAAA. He certainly knows his way around the world of athletics, but right now I'm going to challenge him to send out a brand new AD on their very first job, but I'm only going to let him put, and in honor of our 500th episode, I'm going to expand our normal 3 to 5 tools. You only get to put 5 tools in that toolbox. So, Mike, what 5 tools are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
I would say most of what I would have to say is subjective in the sense that one is one I've already mentioned, that is the need to prepare yourself professionally. Hopefully, you have the ability, you have the support from your school district, and if not, find a way to resolve that. But prepare yourself professionally. Yes, you have a college education in most cases, but do so by getting involved with the NIAAA if it's nothing more than taking leadership training courses and striving for certification and some of the very basic, what we now consider pretty basic things for the athletic administrator. Some states are requiring certification, some school districts are requiring certification, but not all. And oftentimes your leadership in your school may hand you the keys and say, go do the job. And you may have to take it upon yourself to become the very best you can be. I would say number 2, do everything with integrity. Base everything on ethics and ethical behavior, and gain the trust, if you will, of those you work for, those you work with, and you're doing that for the purpose of the benefit of student athletes and those who rely on you. Personal philosophy is important. I mentioned that earlier, I believe. Building yourself a professional and personal philosophy. By that, I mean it's a foundation of beliefs, and it can't be based upon what your AD did when you were in high school or what the AD did when you were a coach and how you think it should be done or should not be done. Oftentimes, you're mistaken, I guess, in what you think the role of the AD is. And that's why the NIAAA exists, to offer you the best practices and how to become involved. Attend the national conference. And I understand that may be a tall order. We have 15,000 members, and we had last year 2,800 attend the national conference. So the percentage is not huge, but it's getting larger of those who have that ability. Just a fantastic professional experience. Those that attend, I think anyone that would go would come back saying that it benefited. They brought away at least something that they're going to implement in their program, if not many things. I'll mention that the national conference is something I'm very, very proud of when you talk about what's occurred during the time you've been an executive director. And it's not a matter of anything I did. It's a continual growth process for the organization. But kind of like membership, I came in July of 2016 as executive director, and those conferences since that time have all been the top 7 conferences attended in the 53-year history. So I'm not taking credit for that in any way. I'm simply saying I'm very proud that's occurring. It's growth in the conference. Obviously, we work alongside the NFHS and their staff to put it on. But I think that autonomy, if you will, and the work of the staff of NFHS and NIAAA have made that happen. And I would say, finally, get involved at the local level, the state level. It may happen at your conference level, city level, whatever the case may be, but begin to build a network of individuals that you can learn from. And one of these days, you will be the go-to person. You'll be the source that others come to for information. And I go back to my first few years, that coach who was put into the AD position as an acting AD and then permanent, and watched my 28 years of yes, I can name 4 athletic administrators at schools around me or somewhere in the state that would bend their knee, if you will, and come to me and say, how can I help you? Give me a call of support. Or I could call them with what's occurring. How do I go about dealing with this item? And just tremendous individuals, and had so much impact on me. And it's all about giving back and being able to grow as an individual and as a professional. I think, as I mentioned, integrity, preparing yourself, a personal philosophy, attending the conference, and just in growing and reaching out and stepping out, if you will, to a type of leadership role, whatever that might be and whatever's demanded of you.
Oh, I love all the tools. Tremendous. And I know you're retired, but you're still involved. Okay. We always encourage our listeners to reach out. And here's a case where we've got a tremendous resource. Is it all right if one of our listeners reach out to you? If they want to pick your brain a little bit, maybe by email. Is that all right? Can we give out your email address?
That would be perfectly fine. M Blackburn, MBLACKBURN, at same address I've had, NIAAA.org.
Well, Mike, again, thanks for taking some time to share with our listeners on our 500th episode. Hope you continue to enjoy retirement, and you're not just sitting back. I know you're staying very busy. Looking forward to seeing you at this year's national conference in Florida. And again, all the best, and thanks for all that you've done for athletic directors, our profession, and for me personally.
Thank you, Jake, very much. I am staying involved. We are writing a second edition of the NIAAA's Guide to Interscholastic Athletic Administration, the textbook, updating it, if you will, and editing and adding to whatever's changed in the past year since its publication, and working with copywriting of LTI courses, and working with Justin Chapman with IAA Magazine, which is something I had great involvement in since 2005. So it's all good. It's all about being involved and giving back.
Exactly. Being involved, giving back, staying busy. Okay. Thanks again. For our listeners, we do this, multiple times during the week, and we upload the Zoom recordings to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. Of course, we appreciate you listening. I hope you have a great day, and come back next time for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Once again, that was our 500th episode. If you're still listening, we're still going to be doing interviews, but for the next couple of weeks, as we head into December in the national conference, we're going to be going back in time. We're going to be featuring flashback episodes of our top, 15, 16, 17 most highly rated interviews. We'll start with that one, number 17 maybe, and then just count down 16, 15, all the way to our highest rated, our most listened to interview of our 500 plus interviews on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll start new interviews after the Christmas holiday as we go into 2024. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, just shoot me an email. Jake's Touchdown at gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me. You can also shoot me a text or give me a call. My cell phone is 305-218-1325, and we'll get you on the Educational AD Podcast. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day, and seriously, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.